right, here we go. Quick note. Let's see on the test. I'm still waiting on Julia, Grayson, Jenna, Lucia, and Hannah to turn in their test. Still waiting on those to turn in their test. I put zeros in the grade book. Fix it or they remain zero. You have until today, and then they will be permanent zeros. Permanent zeros. The test was over a week ago. Over a week ago. All right, here we go. Yesterday you did a review on what mean, median, mode, in range. Tuesday was the class on that, and today we are moving on. Any questions on mean, median, mode, and range? Okay. Here's your homework. I will warn you, today is definitely new stuff. You've never done this before. It's slightly weird. There is a nice process to do this. It's not that complicated. And the results of what you learn in this class, we will use to make a graph. We just don't make the graph today. The graph that this will help with is something called a histogram, and it's the hardest one that we will do. Um, Usually when I teach this class, I have a class full of students, and the first thing we do is we gather some data. I'm looking at online right now. I got 4 people online, so I'm not going to be able to do what I normally do, which means that one of the examples that I typically do is going to be pretty crummy because I only have 4 people, but we'll try to, I don't know, fudge the data a little bit just so that it makes our example a bit more useful. We will only do, we're doing 2 basic things today. We will only do 2 examples of one of the flavors and 1 example of the other one. It is plenty. You really only need to see it once to get this. For those of you that struggle on some things, I would highly recommend playing this video while you do your homework. Watch me do one step, and then you do that step, and then watch me do the second step, so forth and so on. So here we go. All right, so this one is called frequency distributions. Sounds complicated, weird words, but it's not too bad. But it is new, and you haven't done this before. All right. Remember, we're talking in general in this chapter about data, and those are just facts, either numerical or non-numerical about objects. When we try to organize and arrange the data in so that we can interpret it, that's called statistics. And then lastly, one method of interpreting the data is to take the statistics and make a graph of it. We will not be making a graph today. We will simply be doing data and statistics. Eventually, we'll make a graph of this, but not today. All right, so this chapter, these are the graphs that you will make. Bar graphs and line graphs, we've already done those. What's coming up tomorrow, stem and leaf plot, is that correct? Tomorrow's stem and leaf, yes. Tomorrow's stem and leaf plot, then we'll do box and whiskers. And then lastly, we do this thing called histogram. Well, it turns out for stem and leaf, box and whiskers, and histograms, we will use a little bit of what we're going to do today. Histograms use everything that we do today. So the book kind of throws it in, the frequency tables throws it in at this point. All right, so we've already done these. We've done range, we've done mean, median, mode. Remember the 3 with the M's we call measures of central tendency. They find the middle. Remember, we do the mean when there is not an outlier. We do the median when there is an outlier, or outliers, plural. And the mode is when we just want to find which number is repeated the most. And as I said, the best example, why is mode considered a middle, is, for instance, if we do shoe sizes it's a number, right? You could do math with those numbers if you wanted to. You could find the mean or the median, but it probably wouldn't tell you too much. Instead, we would like to find which shoe size is used the most. And that would be like the average shoe size. Okay, so here comes the new stuff. All right, write this down in your notes, please. Today we will be making frequency tables. So it's a table, and it's a table that shows how many times that a specific number or interval is repeated. Notice there's two things there, a specific number or an interval, and those are kind of the two things that we'll be doing today. So we're going to be making tables today. Literally, we're just making a table. The tables come in two flavors. There are going to be tables of specific numbers or tables of something called an interval. But for both of these, we're literally, and that's why it's called a frequency, how frequent something's used. It is a table that shows how frequently that number or that specific interval appears in our data. Now, sometimes words just aren't enough. You got to see an example. But after you see an example, this definition will make perfect sense. So it's a table that shows how many times, that's the frequency part, a specific number or interval is repeated. Frequency table. As always, since we're doing this online, I can't see if you're writing or not writing, so you'll have to stop me if I'm going too quick as I move on. So I'm moving on. Two flavors, once again, here are the two flavors. You start off with data. You get to decide whether you want to do flavor vanilla or flavor chocolate. So flavor vanilla is called individual number, the actual numbers in the data. Okay. If you make a table, a frequency table with individual numbers, you can calculate the mean, median, mode, and range very easy. In fact, we will be doing that today. The second flavor involves interval. And like I said, eventually we're going to be making a graph with this called a histogram. But for when you do an interval of numbers, it is very challenging to calculate the mean, median, mode, and range. So in fact, you will not see questions tonight about the mean, median, mode, and range of the interval tables. Yellow there are the two tables. The tables actually kind of look exactly like each other. But one, you're going to have individual numbers, and the second one, you're going to have an interval of numbers. And as I said, sometimes when I'm just saying the words without actually doing it, it doesn't make as much sense. So the best way to show you this is to simply do a couple. All right, so this is when I have a classroom of 30 kids, I'll ask every single kid, how many pets do you own, right? And then we make a frequency table. So I know there's now we have 5 people here. So here's what a frequency table looks like. Well, it's a table, right? So you're going to have rows and columns. So a frequency table will first have the answers to your question. So how many pets? We're going to ask how many pets. Some people are going to have 0 pets. Some people are going to have 1. Some are going to have 2, 3, 4. And then those kids with the outliers, they say I have 26 pets. So let's just imagine that if we, like I said, I can't really do this with only 5 people, that I asked 26 kids how many pets they own, all right? The second column here is literally, this is why it's called a frequency table, is called the frequency. So let's say, I said F-R-E-Q, frequency. So let's say 4 people said they have 0 pets in the class. Let's say that 3 people said they had 1 pet. 10 people said they had 2. 6 people said they had 3, and 1 person said they had 4 pets. Okay? That is literally what a frequency table is. And you're like, well, is that all we're doing today? Well, the answer is yes, right? But remember, there's 2 flavors here. There's one that involves strictly the numbers. That's the one we're doing right now. And there's one that involves the interval. Now, I'm going to stop talking about the second flavor until we're done with the first flavor. But the first flavor is literally as it appears right here. This is a frequency table, and this is what you will be making tonight, for homework, which is this table. And you're like, well, that's not going to take any time to do this. Well, I'm going to warn you. And for those of you who are already flipping to your homework, you can see that the data set that we have is large. Sometimes they're giving, I'm looking at a couple of them, they give you up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 6, they give you 24 numbers. 24 numbers. So it will take you some time, not like 10 minutes time, but it will take you some time to do these frequency tables. The issue is, what is this good for? Well, at least for the first type, we're going to be able to calculate the mean, median, mode, and range. And we'll do this. All right, so like I said, usually we do this and I show you this, but let's instead, let's see a frequency table. So unknown question, I don't know what it is, but the answers were 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And these are how many times that these numbers, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, appear in our data set. So for instance, I mean, they already gave you the table. We don't know what the data set looked like. But for instance, they asked a question and somebody said 6. And they asked the next question and somebody said 10. And they asked the question again and then somebody said 7. And then they asked the question again and somebody said 6. And then they asked the question, so forth and so on. Notice they asked a bunch of questions here. If we add up the frequencies, you'd find how many people they actually asked the question to. Okay. All right. So tonight for homework, they're going to give you this part of the data set. You will take this part of the data set and turn it into this one. Well, how do you do that? Well, you start off with a table. You figure out what numbers are used. In other words, you find the smallest number and you find the biggest number, and then you count up from there. So 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then you look through your entire data. Now remember, I skipped a whole bunch of numbers here. You look through your data set and you find how many 6s there are. Well, when you count, well, mine only has 2, so I put a 2. There's only 2 6s here. Then you count how many 7s, and according to our table, there were 6 of them. And then you count how many 8s, and according to the table, there were 7 of the 8s. Count how many 9s, there were 4 of the 9s. Count how many 10s, there were 1 of the 10. That's what you're going to be doing tonight for homework when you make a frequency table of flavor variety number 1. And it will tell you, I'm looking at the homework right here. It says questions 1 through 6. It says just make a frequency table. So this is how you're going to be making a frequency table. Find the largest, find the smallest, count up by 1. That's what goes into the left column. For the right column, you simply count how many times that individual number appears in your data set. And now I'm going to stop and ask, does anybody have any questions? No, we're not done. We're just stopping at this point. Okay, great. I just made this thing called a frequency table. What in the world is it good for? Well, it turns out that what's in it's a frequency table form that we can calculate the stuff that we had for homework the last 2 nights very quickly. Watch how quickly this is done. Okay, let's think this through. We got to do mean, median, mode, and range. And all we'll be given is this table right here. Okay, let's see. How can we calculate the mean, median, mode, and range? Well, the mean is the sum of all the numbers divided by how many numbers we have. The sum of all the numbers in the data set. So here is where you got to really pay attention, where you might forget some things. To calculate the mean, we will only be looking at this column right here. These are all the numbers, right? How many numbers there are. All right, so to calculate the mean, we're going to have to add 1 extra column. And the extra column we're going to have to add is called X times F. Where am I getting that from? So the extra column that we're going to add is literally this column times this column. Why am I multiplying? Well, remember, when we do the mean, we add up all the numbers. Well, what are the numbers? Well, the numbers are not 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. The numbers are 2 6s, 6 7s, 7 8s, 4 9s. Well, 4 9s is 36. That's why we need this extra column for multiplication. Now remember, I'm just talking about the mean. We got 4 of these to do: mean, median, mode, and range. So this is just the procedure to calculate the mean. So to calculate the mean, I'm kind of ignore the first column, right? I'm going to look at the second column and multiply the first times the second. 6 times 2 is 12. 7 times 6 is 42. 8 times 7 is 56. 36 and 10. To calculate the mean, what you have to do now is add up the second column and the third column. So I'm adding up these 2 columns in blue separately. I'm going to add these up. I'm going to add up that middle column. 2 plus 6 is 8. 8 plus 7 is 15. 15 plus 4 is 19. 19 plus 1 is 20. I'm going to add up the third column. Can't do that one in my head. Well, maybe I can. Let's see. 12 times plus 42 is 54. 54 and 56 is 110. 110 and 36, 146. 146 and 10 is 156. Okay, there we go. To calculate the mean, you add up all the numbers. Well, we added up all the numbers. We got 56. And then you divide by how many numbers you have. How many numbers do we have? We have 20 numbers. Where am I getting that from? Well, remember, I had 2 6s, 6 7s. How many numbers? It would be the middle column added. So to find the mean, it's going to be the third column divided by the second column. In other words, it's going to be 156 divided by 20. As I stated before, if you play the video while you're doing your homework, it will help you. I try to do that nice and slow. I'm going to back up and do that one more time. All right. How do you calculate the mean? Well, let's see. How do we calculate the mean? Step number one. Step number one, add a third column. The third column will be the first column times the second column. In other words, I call it X times F, but the labels could change. F stands for frequency, by the way. 6 times 2 is 12. We multiply all of those. Next step, we add up each column for the second and the third column. We add up the second column, 2 plus 6 plus 7 plus 4 plus 1. We add up the third column. And then to find the mean, it's third column, that would be this column right here, the total. So I'm taking this number and divide it by the second column, that's this column, and in that case, that's 20. So I'm taking, I don't put RD, otherwise it's not 3 divided by 2. So it's third column divided by ND, second column. Okay, so what would that be? 156 divided by 20. Yes, you can use your calculator, that's fine. 156 divided by 20, I get 7.8. So it turns out with a frequency table, you can do the mean. Well, I don't know if I'm going to say it's really easy, but the process is pretty straightforward. Add a third column, add up the second column, add up the third column, and divide third column by second column. All right, I did a whole bunch of talking there. Any questions to calculate the mean? Tonight for homework, let's see, that would be questions 7 all the way through 14, 7 through 14. Questions 1 through 6, you're just making a frequency table. Then questions 7 all the way through 14, you're doing this process right here. And oh, by the way, we just did mean. You're like, well, that seems like a lot of work. Well, it turns out for the other ones, the median, mode, and range, right, we're halfway there. And you'll see why here in a second. All right, I don't hear anyone asking questions, so I'm going to move on to median. To calculate the median, it's the middle number. All right, you ready? This one's pretty slick. Got to pay attention. To calculate the median, here's what you do. You take this number there and divide it by half. That's not the answer, but that will show you where the middle number is. Remember, median is the middle number. 20 divided by 2 is 10. 20 divided by 2 is 10. So 10 is the middle number. Now remember, when it's even, we need the middle 2 numbers. When it's odd, we just need the middle number. When it's even, we need the middle 2 numbers. So the middle 2 numbers are the 10th and the 11th number. Those would be the middle two numbers. There'd be 10 numbers going this way. There'd be 10 numbers going this way. When we crossed out, remember the process of finding the median, we will be left with the 10th and the 11th number because it's even. All right, I'm going to say that one more time. To find the median, we look at this number right here and take half of it. Okay? If it's odd, life is nice, right? If it's even, half of 20 is 10. Pick 10 and the very next number, 10 and 11. Those are the two numbers that I'm going to have to add up and divide by 2. Well, how do you find the 10th and the 11th number? Well, check it out. Your first number is 6. There's 2 of them. So we just count up till we get to a 10. 2 plus 6 is 8. And then I've got 7 eighths. So 2 plus 6 would be 8. So I'm already up to 8 numbers. I need the 10th and the 11th number. Well, there's 7 of these 8s, right? So that means I'm already up to 8. So 9, 10. I still have 5 of those numbers left. So it turns out the 10th and the 11th number is 8. If there's one that you're going to get lost on, it's this one right here. I'm looking for the 10th and the 11th number. If I were to write these numbers out, 6, 6, and then I've got a string of 7 numbers. I've got 6 of these. And no, you don't need to write these out. I'm just showing you. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm up to 8 numbers. I'm up to 8 numbers because 2 plus 6 is 8. And then I've got a whole string, a mess of 8s. 7 of them to be in fact. So if I'm looking for the 10th and I don't need to write any more because I already have 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Here are the 10th and the 11th numbers, an 8 and an 8. You don't need to do all that mess that I just did. You just simply need to find, oops, I wanted the eraser. You simply needed to find the 10th and the 11th number. So the 10th and the 11th number, if I'm looking at this column right here, the F column, just find the 10th and the 11th number. 2 plus 6 is 8, so the 10th and the 11th number would appear somewhere here. 2 plus 6 plus 7 is 15. So I'm already up to the 15th number. The 8th number is 7. The 9th number is 8. The 10th number is 8. The 11th number is 8. So it turns out the median is 8. There's no math there involved other than dividing 20 by 2. You're going to see a couple of these examples. Don't panic. The mode, we're moving on to mode now. Or any questions on median? The mode is even easier. The mode is the most used number. The most used number, well, what's the biggest number here? The biggest number here is the 7. 7 is not the mode, but the number it's associated with is the mode. See how easy that was? Mode is the easiest one. You just find the largest number and look to the left. The mode is 8. The range is also easy. For the range, we simply take the smallest number. We simply take the smallest number, which is 6, the largest number, which is 10, and subtract. 10 minus 6 is 4. The range is 4. The range is 4. All right. I feel like I need to do that one more time before we move on to another example. So one more time, painful. Okay. You'll be presented with a frequency table and be asked to find the mean, median, mode, and range. To find the mean, add a third column. Multiply the first and the second column together. 12, 42, 56, 13, or 36. Why did I say 13? I was adding. And 10. Add the second column, add the third column. I'm just adding those numbers. To find the mean, it's the third column divided by the second column. 156 divided by 20, it's 7.8. To find the median, I take this number, take half of it. Half of 20 is 10. Since it's even, I need the next number as well too. I need the 10th and the 11th number. If it was odd, I don't need to do that. I just pick the next number. All right. Let's see. So I need the 10th and 11th. How do I find the 10th and the 11th number? Well, I simply count this up until I get to 10. 2 plus 6 is 8. Well, to get to 10 it would be this one. This would get me to 10 and 11. In fact, it gets me to 15, by the way. So the 10th and the 11th number are both 8. 8 plus 8 is 16. 16 divided by 2 is still 8. The mode, we find which one has the most. There's more 8s than any other number, so it's 8. And the range is the biggest number minus the smallest number. The biggest number is 10. The smallest number is 6. 10 minus 6 is 4. There you go. All right. I said we would do 2 examples. Here's our second one. Second example. Second example. They give you the table. They ask you to find the mean, median, mode, and range. Okay. Step number 1, to find the median, multiply the second times the third column. 2 times 3 is 6. 4 times 5 is 20. 6 times 4 is 24. 8 times 5 is 40. 10 times 4 is 40. 12 times 4 is 48. You're supposed to be stop me if you're lost. To find the mean, we add up the second column, we add up the third column. 3 plus 5 is 8, 12, 17, 21, 25. You see what I did there? I just added column F. F stands for frequency. I add up the third column. 26, 50, 90, 130, 178. To find the mean, we divide third column sum by second column sum. 178 divided by 25. Play the video while you're doing the problems. 178 divided by 25. Well, it's an ugly decimal number, but there it is. Okay, now we get to the one that's, I did the hardest one first when you have an even number. To find the median, we look at this number right here and take half of it. Half of 25 is 12.5. Well, we don't need the 12.5 number, right? We need to find the middle number. There's 12 numbers on this side. There's 12 numbers on this side. That's 24. There's one number in the middle. That would be the 13th number. Can you figure out that logic? There's 12 numbers here. There's 12 numbers on this side. 12 numbers on this side. So the middle number would be the 13th number. We like odd numbers. Even numbers are the ones where, okay, when you get that number, you need that number in the next one. So we need the 13th number. The 13th number is the median. So which one is the 13th number? Well, let's just count up till we get to 13. 3 plus 5 is 8. 8 plus 4 is 12. The 13th number would be the very next number. The very next number will be somewhere in here. We look to the left and, oh, by the way, it's 8 again. That's just a coincidence. It won't always be 8. So the median is 8. We like odd numbers. If this had been an even number, I'm going to erase everything. If this had been an even number, let's say F added together was a 24. Let's say F added together was a 24. What would it look like? You still take half of it. Half of 24 is 12. So we need the 12th and the 13th number. Well, it turns out the 12th and the 13th number are still, is that right? Yeah. 8, 12. Oh, no. The 12th and the 13th number are 6 and 8. The 12th number is 6. 3 plus 5 is 8 plus 4 is 12. And the 13th number would be 8. So that would be 6 plus 8 divided by 2. 14. So there, the median would be 7. But that's not the case because there were 25 of the numbers. When the number is odd, when you divide by 2, you get 12.5. Just round up to the next whole number, 13. So I'm looking for the 13th number. 13th number, 3 plus 5 is 8, plus 4 is 12. So the 13th number would be in this row right here, and it's 8. Guys are very quiet. Usually this is where kids lose it. The mean they get, the median is the one that's the hardest one. But once you get it, the mean is actually easier than the mean. But usually to get kids to understand where the meaning comes from takes a little bit of effort. All right, the mode is the easiest one. Which number is repeated the most? Well, 2 is repeated 3 times. Oh, 4 is 5 times, but then so is 8. So this is one of those ones where we get 2 modes. Both 4 and number 8 are repeated 5 times. So we have two modes. Now 6, 10, and 12 are repeated a bunch of times, but they're not repeated 5 times, they're only repeated 4 times. Lastly, the range. Well, let's see, the range is big number minus biggest minus smallest. Biggest number is 12, the smallest number is 2. 12 minus 2 is 10, so the range is 10. Range is the second easiest. Mode is the easiest. Range is the next easiest. And then I'm going to argue that once you get the process, median is just as quick. Mean is the hardest one. As always, mean is always the hardest one. All right, I said we were going to do 2 examples. We just did 2 examples. I can't stress enough. This is easily forgettable. If you've never done it before, and none of you have done this before, I would have this video playing while you do the problems. These are all questions 7 through 10. They give you the table, and then 11 through 14, you have to make the frequency table and do this. I didn't give you all of them. I only gave you evens, so there's only a couple of these you have to do. So this is what you do for flavor number 1 when your first column has individual numbers, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Okay. Well, it turns out that there's another one. So here comes it's not the ugliest one. It's also not the one that requires the most work either. It's just one that requires a little bit of thinking. They're going to give you a bunch of numbers. I mean, here's a bunch of numbers. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 50 numbers here. They're going to ask you to make a frequency table with these numbers. Well, here's the problem. Think about it. Let's see. Can somebody find the smallest number here? What's the smallest number here? Looks like the smallest number here is 18. And the biggest number here, it's kind of hard to find, but the biggest number here is 73. You do not want to be making a table that literally goes from 18 to 73. That'd be 55 numbers or 55 rows. You do not want to do this. Now, luckily for you tonight, they're going to tell you which ones to do this one. This is question 15 and 16 for homework tonight. All right, so we have a different way of handling when the data becomes too large. I mean, it's just too large. We don't want to have 55 rows. So what we do is, this is flavor number 2, is we do something called an interval. If I make an interval that goes from 10 to 80, it would include all of these numbers. In other words, if I consider the numbers from 10 to 80, it would include the smallest, which is 18, and it would include the largest, which is 73. Remember when you're making tick marks on a graph and you have to decide, hey, do I want to go by 1s? Do I want to go by 2s, by 5s, by 10s, by 100? That's the same process here. I need to go from, and I'm making these numbers up, it just needs to be something that includes the smallest and the biggest. I need to go from 10 to 80. Well, maybe a logical choice would be by intervals of 10, right? So I'm going to go, but I'm going to start with 10 though, because 10 is my smallest number I need here. So I'm going to make a column where it goes from 10 to 80. Now be very careful. This is usually an 8th grade mistake. So my first interval, right? I want to go from 10 to 80. That's my range, right? I want to go from 10 to 80, but my first interval will go not from 10 to 20. That's 11 numbers. If you count from 10 to 20, that's 11 numbers. My first interval is 10 to 19. And then my second one will be 20 to 29. And then notice I don't have 55 rows. I only wound up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows. And the reason why they have this second flavor is because it's just too unmanageable. I mean, it's way too unmanageable to have 55 rows to do a frequency table. Notice I have this extra column here called tally. You can use that with your other one if you'd like, but usually the data set is small. Tally just means literally tick marks. So that when you're counting up all the numbers between 10 and 19, instead of trying to keep that number in your head as you're counting, you can just put a tick mark if you'd like. Some people like the tally one, other people like that. Seems like a waste of time, I can count. So let me show you how this works. So how it works is we look at our first interval. Our first interval is 10 to 19. I look inside the data and I count all the numbers that are between 10 and 19. I'm going to go left to right, top to bottom. So if I go from left to right, top to bottom, I'm looking for numbers that are between 10 and 19. There's one tick mark. There's 10 and 19. 10 and, oh, there's two tick marks. 10 and 19. 10 and 19. There are two. Are there only two? It looks like there's only two numbers that are between 10 and 19. And one nice thing is that if you cross them out, if you do make a mistake at the very end, you'll have numbers that are not crossed out. So it turns out that there are only, well, this says 3. Where's, did I miss a number somewhere?
It's the third number.
Oh, yeah, 18. Duh. So I cross that out and I put another tick mark and I get 3. You repeat that process for each one of these intervals, 20 to 29, 30 to 39. Now you can see why this one will take you all the time. Oh, so good news and bad news. Well, the bad news is, yes, this will take a lot of time, but the good news is this is all they have you do is make this table. If you want to use the tally as your middle column, go for it. If you don't, you just want to count, you can do that as well too. The issue is not usually the first row. The first row is easy. It's usually when you get towards the end that all of a sudden it becomes a little bit confusing, especially if you make a mistake and you have to go back. The tally one kind of keeps you honest, right? Of where you're, what you've counted, what you haven't counted. I will say absolutely positively that you can easily make mistakes when you're doing this. So I'm gonna go back a step and we'll just do one more interval. Let's do this 50 to 59 interval. So I'm looking for the numbers 50 to 59 and I'll cross them out in blue. 50 to 59, well, there's one. 50 to 59, I put one tick mark. 50 to 59, 50 to 59, there's two. 50 to 59, 50 to 59, there's 3. 50 to 59, 50 to 59, there's 4. 50 to 59, there's 5. 50 to 59, 50 to 59, there's another one, and it looks like I wound up with 6 of them. All right, and I got it right that time. What do you know? Okay, so that's how you do that one. And believe it or not, that's literally all they want you to do here. You're like, well, that seems like a lot of work. Why am I doing this? You're going to need this when you make what's called a histogram. We're just not there yet. Okay. All right. That was 2 things. Of the 2 things, the first one was the most challenging one, and that was this one right here. So I'm just going to do it for a 4th and final time. All right, to calculate the mean, you make a 3rd column. You multiply the first times the second column. Add the second column, add the third column, divide the third column by the second column. 178 divided by 25. To find the median, you take the second column's total, 25, divided by 2, round up. That gives me 13. I need to find the 13th number. The 13th number, you count up until you get to 13. 3 plus 5 is 8, plus 4 is 12. The 13th number would be in this row right here, and that number is 8. Okay. The mode is the one that's repeated the most. 4 and 8 are repeated 5 times. The range is just the biggest number minus the smallest number. 12 minus 2 is 10. To make the interval frequency table, you first have to find the intervals, and you have to make this part up. So this is a little bit of common sense. I'm looking at questions 15 and 16, and for you, they've already given you the intervals. Like they literally have them written down. So for instance, on 15, they've already said the interval is 1 to 3, 4 to 6, 7 to 9. They're simply asking you to look in the data set and count the frequency. So it's not as bad as it looks. Okay, it's not as bad as it looks. Okay, the ones that are bad are let's see, if 8 and 10 aren't too bad, but I'll say 12 and 14 are the ones that are going to require you to do the most work. Why? Because they didn't give you the table, right? You have to make the table in 12 and 14, and then you have to do the mean, median, mode, and range. All right, Lastly, before I send you on your way here, no intervals except for question 16. So there's only one question where you're doing the interval one there, and they've already given you the intervals. Okay, so it's not bad at all. All right, any questions on anything I've done today? Highly recommend that you play the video while you do your homework. It's not too bad, with the exception of median. I think is probably the hardest one to do. Questions 7, or it will just be 8 and 10 because I gave you evens. Questions 8 and 10, you will have to make that third column. They don't give you that third column, so there's a little bit of work there. You have to add things up as well too, but it's not too bad. If you do run into any problems, make sure you send me a chat. And with that, I'll end class, and we will see you. For the people that forgot to turn in their test, it's a permanent 0 after today. Fix it before it's too late. But I'll end with a happy note, and you guys have a wonderful day, and see you tomorrow.